The storm raged against the panoramic windows of the penthouse, a furious orchestra of wind and rain that was no match for the tiny, scarlet-faced soloist wailing in her mother's arms. Sophia Vance was a titan of industry. At 35, she had negotiated hostile takeovers, stared down senators, and built a billion-dollar wellness empire from a single recipe her grandmother had scribbled on a napkin. But here, in the opulent, silent loneliness of her triplex, she was powerless. Her 10-month-old daughter, Ilara, had been crying for an hour, a raw, heartbreaking sound that seemed to vibrate through Sophia's very bones. "Shh, my love, my little star, please," Sophia whispered, her voice cracking as she paced the vast, cold living room. She had tried everything. The organic, hypoallergenic formula, warmed to the precise temperature. The handcrafted teething rings chilled by her personal assistant. The pediatrician on a 5-figure retainer had been called 3 times. "She's just colicky, Miss Vance. It will pass." It wasn't passing. It was tearing Sophia apart. Every cry felt like a personal failure, a stark reminder that her wealth, her power, her entire empire couldn't buy the one thing that mattered, her daughter's comfort. "What do you want, baby?" "Please tell Mama what you want," she begged, tears of frustration mingling with the expensive perfume on her cheeks. On a whim, a desperate, sleep-deprived impulse, she opened a gourmet food delivery app she'd seen advertised in a magazine. It was for the elite chefs on demand for private dinners. It was absurd, but Ilara's crying was a drill in her skull. She scrolled past Michelin-starred chefs offering truffle-infused menus and landed on a profile with a simple, unassuming photo. A man with kind, tired eyes and a gentle smile. His name was Leo. His tagline, "Comfort food made with heart." Specializing in pediatric nutrition, It sounded like magic. She didn't book him for a dinner party. She selected the emergency consultation option, typing a frantic message with one hand. "My baby won't stop crying. Won't eat. Please, can you help?" Within 20 minutes, her doorman announced him. Leo arrived not in chef's whites, but in a simple, worn jacket, damp from the rain. He carried a small cooler bag, not a kit of professional tools. He was younger than she expected, maybe mid-30s, with the broad shoulders of someone who worked with their hands and the faint lines of perpetual worry around his eyes. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice a low, calm baritone, a stark contrast to the screaming and the storm. "Thank you for coming," Sophia said, her usual composure shattered. She gestured helplessly to Ilara. It's been a long night." Leo didn't look at the priceless art on the walls or the sweeping city view. His eyes went straight to Ilara. His gaze was not one of clinical assessment, but of deep instinctual understanding. "May I?" he asked softly, nodding toward the baby. Sophia, a woman who trusted no one, found herself nodding, her arms loosening their protective grip. Leo took Ilara with a practiced, confident grace. He didn't bounce her or shush her aggressively. He simply held her close, his large hand supporting her head, and began to hum a low, tuneless melody. The change wasn't instant, but the frantic edge of Ilara's cries began to soften into ragged, hiccuping sobs. "She's not in pain," Leo said, his eyes meeting Sophia's. "She's hungry, truly deeply hungry, but not for what's in a can." He moved to the kitchen, a sprawling marble landscape of state-of-the-art appliances that were rarely used. As if he owned the space, he opened his cooler. He pulled out a container of homemade pear and ginger puree, a small tub of what looked like bone broth, and some delicate, thread-like noodles. "My daughter Maya," he said, his back to Sophia as he began to work with a quiet, fluid efficiency. She had the same discontent with everything. Turns out she just had a very specific palate. A soft, sad smile touched his lips. This was her favorite. "Sunshine noodles," we called it. Sophia watched, mesmerized. This wasn't a chef performing. This was a father remembering. He simmered the broth, the aroma of gentle chicken and ginger beginning to fill the sterile air. He warmed the puree. He cooked the tiny noodles, his movements a silent ballet of purpose. "What's in it?" Sophia asked, her CEO self needing to know the ingredients. "The broth is from free-range chicken bones, simmered for 18 hours with ginger and a single piece of kelp for minerals. The pear is steamed with a hint of fresh ginger to aid her digestion. The noodles are just organic spelt, cut thin for little mouths," he explained, not as a sales pitch but as simple fact. "No salt, no sugar, just food." He strained a tiny amount of the broth into a porcelain cup and brought it, along with a small bowl of the puree, to the sofa where Ilara was now merely sniffling, her wide, tear-filled eyes fixed on this kind, strange man. Here, he said, handing the cup to Sophia. You try it first, so she knows it's safe. The gesture was so profoundly understanding it stole Sophia's breath. He knew she was a mother drowning in fear and suspicion. She took the cup. The broth was sublime. It was warmth and comfort in liquid form. It tasted like security, like a memory she'd never had. Tentatively, she brought the spoon of pear puree to Ilara's lips. The baby hesitated for a second, then opened her mouth. She swallowed, and then for the first time in hours, she made a sound that wasn't a cry, a soft, eager ah. Sophia fed her another spoonful, then another. Ilara ate greedily, her tiny hands reaching for the spoon. A sound escaped Sophia then, a half-sob, half-laugh of pure, unadulterated relief. She looked up at Leo, tears streaming down her face freely now. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You have no idea. Leo just smiled, a genuine warm smile that reached his eyes. It's the best sound in the world, isn't it? The quiet after the storm. He packed up his things, refusing any form of payment beyond the standard app fee. Just doing my job, Ms. Vance, he said softly at the door, his gaze lingering on Ilara, who was now cooing contentedly in her mother's arms. Give her the rest of the noodles tomorrow. She'll be just fine. After he left, the penthouse felt different. The silence was no longer empty but peaceful. The storm outside had abated. Sophia held her sleeping daughter, the ghost of that incredible broth still on her tongue. It was more than a recipe. It was an act of salvation, and as she sat in the quiet dark, a single bewildering thought echoed in her mind. It tasted like home. Leo's sunshine noodles became a religion in the Vance penthouse. Ilara devoured them, her colic vanishing as if it had never been. Sophia, in a move that baffled her board, hired Leo as a permanent exclusive consultant. He came 3 times a week, his quiet presence filling the kitchen with smells that made the vast apartment feel for the first time lived in. Their interactions were a delicate dance. Sophia was all sharp edges and controlled vulnerability, a fortress built on business acquisitions and personal loss. Leo was quiet solidity, his strength not in his words but in his actions. He cooked. He taught a hesitant Sophia how to make simple, wholesome meals for Ilara. He spoke of his daughter, Maya, with a love that was palpable and a grief that was carefully veiled. She's with her mother in Italy for a year, he'd said once, when Sophia asked, his eyes drifting to the window. School exchange. I miss her every day. Sophia understood missing someone. She never spoke of Ilara's father. It was a closed book, a wound too deep to examine. One evening, after Leo had prepared a simple meal of roasted chicken and vegetables that they shared, a first, they sat in the living room while Ilara slept. The city lights glittered below them. This broth, Sophia said, holding a cup of the now familiar sunshine broth he'd made for her. She'd been feeling unwell and he'd insisted. It's unlike anything I've ever tasted. It's the heart of my entire business, you know. Vance Vitality. It was built on my grandmother's recipe for a healing broth, but this is what she was trying to capture. Leo looked at her, his expression unreadable. What was your grandmother's recipe? Sophia gave a wry smile. A secret. The one and only. Passed down to me. Just chicken, ginger, a little onion, and her secret ingredient she'd always whisper about but never name. I've spent millions trying to reverse engineer its magic for mass production. I never could. The soul was missing. She took another sip, closing her eyes. This has the soul. She looked at him, a crazy idea forming. Leo, I want to buy this recipe. Name your price. $1.5 million. It could be the new cornerstone of Vance Vitality. We could call it Sunshine Broth. We'd give you full credit, of course. Leo shook his head, a sad final gesture. No. 10 million, Sophia pressed, the Titan re-emerging. It's just a recipe, Leo. His head snapped up, and for the first time she saw a flash of anger in his gentle eyes. It is not just a recipe. He stood up, pacing before the window. That recipe, it was my wife's. Clara. She created it for our Maya when she was a baby, just like Ilara. It was her sunshine. His voice broke. She was a chef, too. A brilliant one. She was offered a once-in-a-lifetime job in New York. We were so happy. We were going to build a life here. A cold dread began to creep up Sophia's spine. The timeline, the city, the food. The night she was supposed to sign the contract she went out to celebrate. With the CEO of the company, a power dinner. He turned to face Sophia, his eyes brimming with a pain so raw it was physical. She never came home. There was a car accident. The CEO was driving, drunk. The world tilted. The air vanished from the room. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, terrified bird. She couldn't breathe. The CEO walked away without a scratch. Leo continued, his voice a hollow whisper. A team of high-priced lawyers made sure of it. A settlement was reached. A generous, silent settlement. He looked straight at her, and the truth hung between them, monstrous and undeniable. Her name was Clara Rossi, he said, each word a shard of glass, and the company that hired her was Vance Vitality. The CEO was you, Ms. Vance. Sophia felt the porcelain cup slip from her numb fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound was like the crack of her own world. The memory, long suppressed, flooded back. The celebratory dinner. The too many glasses of champagne. The rain-slicked roads. The brilliant, vibrant young chef in the passenger seat. The guilt that had consumed her. That she had buried under layers of work and wealth, and the desperate hope of a new beginning with the daughter she discovered she was carrying just weeks later. You? She choked out. You knew? All this time? I knew who you were the moment I walked in, Leo said, his anger gone, replaced by an infinite devastating sorrow. I came here to hate you. I wanted to see the monster who took my wife and my daughter's mother away, and then hid behind her money. I wanted to scream at you, but then I saw Lara. I saw you not as a billionaire, but as a mother just as lost and desperate as I was, and I couldn't. He had fed her daughter. He had comforted her. He had saved her with the very recipe her mother had created. The secret ingredient Clara always used, Leo said, his gaze falling on the shattered pieces of the cup. The golden broth seeping into the white marble was a single dried shiitake mushroom, for umami, for depth. He looked back at Sophia, his eyes holding a universe of forgiveness and loss. She said it was what gave the broth its soul. He turned and walked out of the penthouse for the last time, leaving Sophia utterly alone. She collapsed to her knees amidst the shattered porcelain, the haunting, familiar aroma of the broth rising around her. A scent that was no longer comfort, but a devastating elegy. It was the taste of a life she had destroyed, the ghost of a woman whose legacy had impossibly saved her own daughter. And in the crushing, silent weight of that truth, Sophia Vance, the billionaire who had everything, finally understood the true cost of the meal she had just shared.